Shireen, the Prime Minister spoke about the poor and said he'll help the poor. The poor are the first priority for India because people have to survive. I think all over the country, everybody supports that. They meet DBT. The government is giving 500 rupees for about 20 crore women. That's not enough. But they're giving free rations, gas, etc. But the big issue to keep jobs apart from the poor is the lack of liquidity for the MSMEs. RBI has released 350,000 crores to the money market. But what do they use? The money is not going to the users. Now we are finding that big companies are raising bonds at cheaper rates. This is not meant for big companies. This is meant for the banks to give to the MSMEs to keep the jobs. The SBI chairman has increased the working capital limits by 10%. I think it should be increased by 20%. And we need a 50,000 crore credit guarantee fund to guarantee the first 10% loss for any money given to MSMEs and others to increase the working capital. The banks will not lend unless the government has to give a guarantee, and the government must come forward because today, for them, it's a liquidity matter, not a solvency matter. They need liquidity to last till business comes back. If they don't have liquidity, they'll start laying off people. Once they lay off people, it is difficult to start again. Many of them will die. 25 to 30% MSMEs will die. I read a report which said that 25% of MSMEs surveyed have money only for 1 month. Another 25% have money for 3 months. Now 1 month is over. So we need this massive liquidity support. Banks will not lend unless there's a credit guarantee. Government has to do that. And the RBI has to make sure that money goes to the MSMEs. RBI cannot wash his hands off, cannot sit back. Look at what the US Fed has done. Look at what the UK government has done. They're trying to get money to the user. They're trying to give money as a salary guarantee to keep the jobs. The government may not want to do salary guarantee jobs. At least they must give liquidity, and that I think is important. The next point is, Shireen, which I'm disappointed is, there is perhaps 1 lakh crore of refunds due to people, income tax, GST, and the 14% guaranteed fund to the states. Now, why didn't the finance minister said up to 5 lakhs salaries? 5 lakhs is nothing for MSMEs. Release the whole tax refund. It's our money, for God's sake. It's not the government's money. It's our money. Give the money back. Why are you holding on to the money? And look at the absurdity. They pay 6% interest, which is very cheap, so they hold on to our money. And we have to pay some 12, 18% interest in case we don't pay. So they're exploiting the situation, which is totally wrong. And I think they must give back the people's money, which is due to them. It is not their money. Now, it is not their money. Next thing is, the states have got 14% guaranteed. It is a contract. It is a commitment to the federal government. They must keep the commitment, borrow money and give it to the state, not make states beg for the money. I think that on that we must push the government to do, because it's the money of the people. And then, of course, we have this, we need the enhanced liquidity, and then the packages come later. But today the key thing is, how do we survive for the next 15, 20 days? How do we make the payroll for April? Now, the Prime Minister extended till May. We have to pay the payroll for April. And if people start getting layoffs and people are laid off, it will create a human catastrophe. Because, Shireen, remember, this whole year till March, our GDP may be negative. It may be 2.5%, because agriculture may grow at 3 to 3.5%. It's 17% of GDP. Industry is 25% of GDP. Growth will be 0 or negative. Services about maybe 60% of GDP, and 60% may grow only about maybe 3-4%. It normally grows 7%. Barring the government sector, which is 15% of services, where we pay taxes, they all get the salaries, everything will be negative. All the services have been devastated. So we could have a negative growth. So we have to prepare for that, not let it go down. And the big thing is, Shireen, government must open up infrastructure. This is a time for the government to spend on roads, on ports, get the infrastructure sector going, pay back the money which is due, ask them to start working, because, most of the areas are free. There are not many people going around. They can have social distancing, and that will put some money into the economy. Anyway, the infrastructure budget is 3.5-4 lakh crores this year. They must start spending, and you don't have to have restrictions or stoppages there, because that can go on. The airport construction can go on, the port construction can go on, the roads can go on, and all the other infrastructure can go on, and that will at least pump some money and keep some people employed.
Yes, you're right. We don't know whether that is going to be part of the exemptions that the government may announce on the 20th of April, but we will have to wait for clarity on that. But Mr. Pai, you talked about meeting payroll obligations and payroll commitments. Now, the Prime Minister, in that 7-point to-do list, saying that you shouldn't retrench and you shouldn't ask employees to leave. But how crucial is this going to be, especially for the MSMEs, as you point out, where the pain is severe?
See, Shireen, I'll give you some data. There are 8 crore people on the payroll in EPFO and ESI. 8 crore. That is the monthly figure, all right? Out of which 4 crore are contract. The people are telling the labor contractors, just go. Just shut and go. What will the people do? Because they're saying they don't have money. If they have an expectation, the next 30 days we can open up, work can start, they will keep them. But they need cash in hand. The Prime Minister has made an appeal. Everybody will adhere to the appeal. But where is the money to pay? The Prime Minister can appeal and say, don't lay off. We'll all say, yes, sir, we don't want to lay off. But if you don't have cash to pay, how will they leave? They need cash. It is a question of liquidity, it's not solvency. You're not giving a grant. You're not giving a grant. We're not asking for a grant at this point. Give cash. For example, startups. Many startups have taken pay cuts. They're talking of laying off people because they got TDS refunds due. Give them refunds. Why up to 5 lakhs? 5 lakhs is ridiculous. Our money. Give the whole refund. Give the GST refund to everybody. You can always claim it back later because that money belongs to us. You are taking it in advance. Give it back. At least if they start doing that, pumping up liquidity where the money it belongs to the people, belongs to taxpayers, that will send a good signal. Now, the policy statement about not laying off has to be buttressed with some act from the government economically. And if you look at the UK, you know, the new chancellor, who is an Indian, has done a remarkable job. $300 billion of loan guarantees. Loan guarantees, $300 billion. The US has $2 trillion, out of which $500 billion, I think, are loan guarantees. And they're giving money to keep people on the payroll because all of them know that jobs are the most important thing. When we come out of it, if people don't have jobs, and these are all vulnerable people whose ability to keep going is not more than 2 or 3 months because they don't have much of savings. And you can't expect a person to live on 1,500, 2,000 rupees a month, let's say 1,000 rupees, 2,000 of cash, some rations and a gas stove. Yes, that's all good in the rural areas. It's all good in some areas where they get additional income because that has to be buttressed additional income. And for that, we need support for the next 30 days, 60 days. And that is what we're appealing to government. You know, I written a paper about nearly 3 weeks ago where we said we need a stimulus of 5 lakh crores, telling that we need to have DBT, we need to have support for credit guarantee. I have a credit guarantee fund. You know, the SBI chairman has gone out of the way, but he's reluctant to give more money because he'll feel, tomorrow I give money, I lose money. I know my neck is on the noose. Why should I do it? The private sector will not give because there is no grand uncle to give them capital. So I think liquidity has to be there, and the RBI governor and RBI has to wake up. This is the time for the call. In fact, Shireen, I want to make a suggestion that government should dip into the RBI's reserves. RBI has got about 7 lakh crores of reserves. Take 3 lakh crores from them and use it for the budget. Transfer to the government. Why should the RBI have such a high level of reserves? After the RBI is owned fully by the government, it is the sovereign is the government. Government guarantees the RBI. Why should the RBI have this kind of reserves? RBI can transfer it from the balance sheet to the government, and I think it's time the RBI gave it up.
Well, the RBI did make a fairly significant contribution to the government already. Let's see whether that is going to be something. And there are now guidelines put in place. There are guidelines put in place on the back of the Jalan Committee's recommendations, which were accepted by the government. But yes, I would imagine that all of this is perhaps on the table as a consideration, sir.
These are desperate, once-in-a-lifetime measures. If the RBI does not come to the rescue of the people of this country when we are in trouble, when people don't have money, and RBI doesn't step up and stand up, like the Federal Reserve has done, the bank of every central bank in the world has done, our RBI, I thought was coming up, but I feel that they're not stepping up. It's time for the government to tell them, give us this money, this is our money anyway. Government is 100% owner. It's a creation of statute. It is not an impingement on the policy measures that have to take monetary policy. Balance sheet management of the own of some of a wholly owned company of the government. Government as a owner can demand. They got 6 lakh crores. They got $475 billion at 53, 54 rupees to the dollar, I think. Maybe 55 rupees now. The dollar is a 76. They can mark it up to 65, 66. And that money they can release. Because the chances that the rupee will go to 66 is very remote. Maybe 5-6%. The risk can be taken. They can do that. Why not? They got a gold value reserve of 1 lakh crore. That means between the book value and the market with the gold, the difference is 1 lakh crore. And the gold was given by the government of India to them at historical rates. So I think we need drastic measures. It's a government thing. They don't want to borrow. They don't want to do it. They can go to the RBI, monetize that, take the RBI reserves.